Welcome back, guys. Thanks so much for checking out step 2 of our ear training series. I'm pumped to be able to share with you what we're talking about this week, which is identifying the low end portions of a song. Last week, if you didn't see what we had for you, we talked about identifying the notes and being able to hum right along with those notes as you're playing in a guitar or maybe playing a piano. I want you to really identify those notes and be able to hum along with those notes in the scale. And so what your goal was last week was to be able to not only hum along with yourself playing, but also be able to hum the scale by yourself without any instrument. And again, if you're able to do that, then you're really set up well for what we're talking about this week, because everything we talk about this week builds directly off of that. It's all about identifying spaces between notes, called intervals, the distance between notes and things like that. So hopefully that was able to work for you. Even if not, if you're only able to hum along with yourself playing through the scale, but you can't do it by yourself, that's okay. That's a great step in the right direction. You just want to keep going down that road. You want to keep working at it, keep trying to be able to do it on your own. The more that you practice with it, the more that you practice humming with the scale together, you and the instrument, the more that you'll be likely to do it on your own, because it'll just kind of be in your head. You'll know the way it's formatted. You'll know how to do that, okay? And your ear will be used to hearing that. So step 2 today, it's really awesome. It's identifying the low end. And this is one of the harder pieces of all of this, okay? If you're a vocalist, if you're a guitar player, typically this is going to be a harder piece because you're not used to listening for the low end. Your main objective is to listen for the melody line or the harmony line or the lead line being played by the guitar or the piano. That's what's common for you. And so your ear, just over time and by playing that same way, has kind of adjusted itself to really try and listen for that. So many people, when I played piano and I played bass, and when I first met my wife, I would just pick out a bass line and be like, oh my gosh, that sounds so great if we were listening to music in the car. Like, I love that bass line. Did you hear that? And she'd be like, hear what? I have no idea what you just heard. And she, for the longest time, didn't hear the bass. It was like she didn't know it existed. And over time, the more that I kind of was like picking it out to her and like saying, hey, did you hear that? Like, that is the bass guitar. And she'd be like, oh, I get it now. I'm hearing it. And it just took her some time to adjust her ear and really calibrate her ear to start hearing that. It wasn't that she couldn't hear it. It was just that her brain was so focused on the melody and the lead and maybe even the drums or something else that was more high-end focused. Shifting to more of a low-end focus just wasn't her natural reaction, and it was hard to do. And that's how a lot of my students are, honestly. A lot of them sing and play piano, and so in singing, you're so focused on the melody, you're so focused on the top level of what's happening, the top end, and you're really not too focused on the bottom end, but that's where all of this really comes to a head. That's what we have to listen for. A bass guitar, piano in the left hand, anything like that, they are playing what's called the root notes, okay? And the root note is the base of the chord. So if you're playing a 1 chord in the key of C, you're playing a C major, a C, an E, and a G. And your left hand, or the bass guitar, would be playing the note C. It'd be playing the root of that chord. The bass guitar is kind of the base, the foundation of a band, and it's usually sticking with those root notes for the most part to help solidify the rest of the sound that comes from it, because everybody else is either doing a chord inversion or they're doing lead lines, and without that base, that foundation, there really isn't a good chord basis. And so that's what you want to be listening for. And so as you listen, you want to identify that low end, whether it's coming from the piano, the acoustic guitar, the bass guitar, whoever it is, and you want to identify that pitch. Okay, now this is where we go back to the scale humming. Once you're able to identify a pitch, then you're able to start piecing them together, okay? So let's say for Reckless Love, the intro sounds a little bit like this. Okay, so you heard that bang, 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 ding, 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 ding. You heard that intro right there, right? That is the lead line. That's what you don't want to listen for, okay? Which is hard because that's what everybody wants to listen to. That's what everybody loves about the song, okay? What you want to be listening for is the low end, okay? The low end of what's happening in that song. And to illustrate this for you, I'm going to show you kind of what the low end sounds like. This song is in the key of F sharp. Okay, so we're going to be going from a 6 to a 5 to a 4 to a 1. So the bass guitar is going. Sounds really nice when you pair them together, right? But the bass, all it's doing, all the root note is boom, 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 It's definitely not the most fun part of the song, but it's very vital, okay? And it's what's really vital in telling you what chord's being played, okay? So the first thing you want to do is you want to identify the lowest note that's being played. And so here it would be, you just hum right along with that, and then da, and then bum, and then And again, you're trying to do this without any instrument present. It's really focusing on your ear, okay? So if we start with da, da, what then you would do, if you were able to identify those pitches, da, da, the first thing you want to do is identify whether you're going up or whether you're going down, okay? So clearly, from da, da, you know we're going down. We're not going up in pitch, we're going down in pitch. We're going da, da. Now the question is, how far are we going down, okay? Are we going down 3 pitches? Are we going down 4? Are we going down an octave? Are we going down 1 pitch, okay? And this is where what we learned last week is all that matters, okay? If you're able to hum the major scale pattern, you will know that we're going down just 1 pitch. Okay, so in this key, we're in the key of F sharp. Da, 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 da. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 is where we started, and then we went here. 6, 5. The more that you hum that pattern, the more you'll know going here to here. That's just a whole step down. That's from a 6 to a 5, and you may not even know that the first one was a 6, but you'll know that from here to here is a 1-note jump down. Does that make sense? Great. So from there, we'd go, da, we know we're going down 1 note, and then here, so we went ba, ba, ba. You can kind of tell you're walking down, you're kind of stepping down 1 step at a time, right? So we just went 6, 5, 4. Da, 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 da. Da, da. And what I like to do is kind of single out those 2 pitches. So if I'm listening to a song and I just heard the ba, da, 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 I'd go back and ba, da, and I'd kind of sing that over and over. Da, 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 da. Okay, let me walk that down because I know where I'm going down in pitch. I just don't know how far. Da, 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 da. So da, 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 da. Okay, so I need to subtract 3 from where I just was. Okay, so if I was starting on the 6, we went down 1 to the 5, and then down 1 to the 4 again, and then we subtract 3 from the 4, and we get a 1, right? So that's kind of how I start formulating this stuff as I'm listening to it. I'll start picking the pitches. Here we go, down 1, down 1 again, and then down. Okay, I don't know really how far that is just off the top of my head, so I'm going to hum backwards through the scale. Ba da 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 4 3 2 1. Okay, that's a 4 to a 1 progression, right? And that's how you can kind of start doing this. But it all starts with identifying the bass note, the lowest pitch note being played. Okay, and so as you practice this week, what I really want you to do is I want you to pick your favorite worship song or an easy one that you know off the top of your head. Maybe it's Reckless Love, but maybe you can pick another worship song that you're really familiar with and just start working your way through that. Maybe it's Great Are You, Lord. Maybe it's Oh Come to the Altar. Maybe something like that, something simple, a little bit slower where you have more time to think through. And not too many chord changes, and that'll kind of help you get started at least. But what you want to start doing is identifying the low end. Identify the lowest pitch note being played, and then start stringing the notes together. And so whether you're going from a 4 to a 1, whether you're going from, down 1 pitch or whether or not you're going down 2 pitches, you just want to start identifying those notes and then start humming them back to back. So take the first 2 pitches and hum the first one back to back with the second one, da da, or whatever it is. Da da, and then take your knowledge of the scale pattern and hum backwards, or maybe you're going da 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 da. I know da is 2 pitches higher than here, or 2 notes higher in the scale than the first one. So whatever the case may be, take those first two pitches that you've heard in the bass side of things in the low end and try to identify the interval, the distance between those two, okay? And then take the next chord and hopefully you're just taking an intro section here and you're just taking usually in the intro there might be 4 chords or so, 3 or 4 chords being played, and you can just kind of take it slow like that. Identify the first 2 of those chords first, find the interval between there, and then take the next 2 and identify the interval there, and then take the last 2. And ultimately, by the end of it, you'll know the distance between every chord. So maybe you don't know what chord you're starting on. You don't know you're starting on a 1 chord or a 4 or a 5 or whatever, but you could just say, okay, let's say I'm starting on a 1. Okay, this next chord is 2 pitches lower, so that's a 6. This next one's 2 lower from that, that's a 4. The next one's 1 higher than that, that's a 5. So my progression could be a 1, 6, 4, 5. And the only thing I really have to do now is identify where that first chord is, what that first chord is. And fortunately for you, that's what we're going to cover next week. We're going to talk about how to identify what chord is what based on what we hear. Okay, we have major chords, we have minor chords, 1 chords, 4 chords, 5 chords, 6 threes, you name it. They all have kind of a certain property to them, and they all kind of have a certain sound. And the more that you identify that and you know what that is, you can start attributing that sound with a chord, and it all will start making sense, okay? But the first step is identifying that low end and then stringing them together so you can identify the distance between those pitches. So I hope that makes sense. Take your favorite worship song, start learning the intro, start trying to identify the lowest pitch, and then string them together to identify the intervals, the distance between those notes in that intro section. All right, I'd love for you to reach out to me and let me know if you have any questions about it as you go through. I know it's kind of tricky. It's a little bit trial and error. It's not something that is super easy to do at first, but I promise you the more you practice it, the better you're going to get at it. It just takes time. As I said in the first video, I probably spent countless hours on this when I was in high school and college, just wasting away listening to songs. And I wasn't really wasting away, fortunately. It was good for me. It was helping me be better at it, but I spent so many hours doing it and just honing that craft and really identifying. And I would take really hard songs that had some really interesting chord changes and try to hear those on the fly. The more that you do that, the better you're going to get at it. So practice it really well. Try and take the next step towards being able to use your ear in this way to be very practical, really hearing these chords the first time you hear them, and be able to identify the low pitch, the lowest pitch in the chord, and then identify the distance between those notes, all right? And even if you want to go back to lesson 1, to the first week we did this series, and identifying the notes in the C major scale or any major scale and just kind of humming along with them, go back to that, maybe kind of refresh yourself on what it sounds like, and then hit this one. That'd be a great idea. But next week we're going to talk about the chord properties, how you can just immediately identify what a chord is, at least the first one. It's going to be amazing stuff and you're going to love it. But until then, I hope you have a great time practicing this stuff. Can't wait to see you then.